Hi, I'm Edwin Samuelson, and welcome to the CineFiles, a show that allows you to eavesdrop on the conversations of fellow film fanatics. Today, we're going to be discussing Francis Ford Coppola in the 70s. Francis Ford Coppola is better known today as a connoisseur and a manufacturer of wine, but back in his day, he was probably the greatest filmmaker of his time. He only directed 4 films in the 70s, but as my colleagues here can agree, all 4 of these films are masterpieces. In fact, I would say they're 4 of the greatest films ever made. The auteur. And Francis Ford Coppola...
The director as auteur.
Yeah, Francis Ford Coppola is a phenomenal director. He was a student, I believe, at USC.
And he was a graduate of the Corman
Corman
School of Film Producing.
Yeah, and somehow, I don't know, here's what happened is when he somehow got a major studio deal, it's kind of unusual what happened is that back in the 60s, as Coppola's talked about, the only people that were making film were really old people. I'm talking senior citizens. There was no lifeblood. It was very hard. I'm talking harder then than today to get into the motion picture industry.
Yeah, because you had to work your way through the system.
The studio system, which was starting to
it was dying.
Evaporate.
But Finnegan's Rainbow somehow got good reviews. It got him some notices, and then he allowed him to make another film called The Rain People.
The Rain People.
Which is a very good film with James Caan. And this film was very important because it introduced Coppola to James Caan, who would star in the film that would make Francis Ford Coppola perhaps probably the most famous director overnight. Mm-hmm. And that film was The Godfather. Now, The Godfather had a very long history of being made. It was originally offered to Sergio Leone.
And Peter Bogdanovich.
Peter Bogdanovich, and Jack Nicholson was up for a role, as was Jack Nicholson and
Danny Thomas.
Yeah, and it's ridiculous.
And then it became a low-budget picture.
Yeah, well, here's what happened: it was originally pitched as a screenplay, if I'm not mistaken, by Mario Puzo, and then somehow it was written into a book. They offered Francis Ford Coppola the job of directing The Godfather because they wanted a real Italian to direct it because they were afraid of, of course, racism, stereotypes, like who wants to make the movie with the big Guido, guy. In fact, Coppola even talked about that, he's had the guy talking with the fake Italian accent, and he said he just did not want to do it.
Look, actually, we'll get into this later, but the movie is one of those rare cases where it's a grand improvement upon the source material. The original book apparently is just basically a sort of exploitive, potboiler piece.
It's really sleazy.
Wasn't there a point where they just thought it was just going to be like a B picture?
Well, yes. Here's what happened. It was originally going to be a very low-budget film because here's what happened. The book became a huge success, so they said, let's just get this out and make money. But then when they saw the rushes, they said, wow, this could actually be a good movie, so they actually gave Coppola more money. Coppola insisted that it had to be a period piece, and thank God he did, because that is what makes the movie as great as it is the attention to period detail. And what's so great about this film is that it's amazing that it's such a great movie, because Coppola had so many problems with this. You know how many times he was fired, almost fired? They said they had another director working with him in case he screwed up to take over. And they had no faith in Al Pacino. Can you imagine this? Al Pacino, they thought he sucked.
They had no faith in Marlon Brando.
Yeah, and Marlon Brando.
Because Marlon Brando's career was on the decline at that point. Coppola really desperately wanted to work with Brando.
Yeah.
He really wanted to work with him. And Pacino, they wanted someone else. They wanted James Caan for the Pacino role. Is that what, am I not mistaken?
Well, after they went through all the possible stars they wanted, then they thought about James Caan, but he really wanted Al Pacino, and Al Pacino kept having to do screen test after screen test to prove he could handle the role.
Everyone thinks when they think The Godfather, they think of Brando, rightfully so, because Brando's character is unlike any kind of character you've ever seen. In fact,
larger than life.
Larger than life persona. I mean, just the little acting nuances, the little touches you see that Brando do. Like they said that the cat, they saw the cat on the lot and they just put it in his arms and they just said he took to it and used it as a prop.
I love the first one. It works so well. It's a very complex, very well casted film. I mean, everyone talks about Brando, but if you focus on Brando's performance, it's almost like he's playing a passive-aggressive gangster. It's not really. With the reputation, if you've never seen Godfather before and you see The Godfather for the first time, you'll be surprised at how unshowy his performance really is.
He's more compassionate.
And Pacino plays a very fascinating character. It's just, the whole thing is very, very fascinating in the complexity of each character. These are criminals. These are sociopaths. But Coppola is very good at making you feel a great deal of sympathy towards them and presenting the complexities of the world they're in, especially with Michael Corleone. Al Pacino's character, you sit there and the movie starts off with them saying, I shun my family's lifestyle. I am not the same person as them. But you get little hints in that maybe he's in denial about that. And of course he is. And the whole series is about his trajectory from this guy who's just trying to be his own man to embracing his family's lifestyle and becoming the monster he doesn't want to be.
Well, one of the things I liked about the film was that I waited, I guess I was a teenager when I first saw it. I can't say I really ran away from the film. But, I sat there in one sitting, quiet. I've never seen it on the big screen. That's unfortunate. But the thing I noticed the most about the film is how layered it is and how nuanced everything is. There's not a wrong misstep. There's nothing in the film where I can say, oh, he could have cut that or he should have changed that. And the film, it goes to my whole feeling of Coppola in the 70s, which, since we're talking about it, is that I always just felt like watching this film, even though this is one of the films where he had most of his problems with, and also, Apocalypse Now, which we'll talk about later, but I find that it seems like the more chaos he has to deal with, the better his films end up being. And it's unfortunate now that when he makes films in his later career, for a while he was a director for hire, but now that he's making the films supposedly that he wants to make, they don't make any sense or they're horrible. But I don't see them as one film. Even though it's a continuing story, I actually like the second one a little better than the first one, but you have to see The Godfather to understand The Godfather Part 2.
Well, what I like about one thing I will say, I have to give the one minus in The Godfather. And when I saw it years ago, it didn't bother me, but it did bother me recently. But it's such a it's like a little flaw you just pick out and you just ignore it. And I think you guys can agree with me, is Talia Shire. She is dreadful in the film.
I don't think so.
It doesn't bother me.
The scene where she's, throwing the eggs and, with Johnny Russo and she calling her guinea brat, I was shocked at how poor her performance was.
I don't agree with that because I think there is an intent behind how she approaches that role. I've known many people like that character. The character that's never given the respect that they deserve, who's either the daughter of the family and everyone treats her like the little girl and stuff like that, but they never take her seriously. And that's her frustration. That's her curse, that she will never be taken seriously. And that's why she's a little overly hysterical. Or that's why she finds herself attracted to bad guys, guys that will betray her own family.
It's not the way it's written. It's the way she performs.
And I completely disagree with that. I think she's very, very good. And this is I'm talking about someone who has a habit of casting family members in his movies.
Nepotism.
Usually it fails miserably.
Yes.
But I think Talia Shire is actually very good in both movies. I don't think there's a false note, and I love the casting, the fact that Sterling Hayden has this one scene, but it's such an important scene and such an important character, and the attention to period detail is fantastic, but it's not trying. What's interesting about The Godfather, yes, there's a lot of attention to period detail, but he's not trying to make a period movie.
And it's never over the top.
Yeah.
And kudos.
It has a richness.
Kudos to Gordon Willis, too, for his amazing camera work, which was shot on Technicolor, one of the last films in Technicolor. The Godfather 2 was also shot in Technicolor, but it was one of the last films, and it's just gorgeous to look at.
It's brilliant that it starts off in the wedding. It's absolutely brilliant that that's where it starts. And within the context of this wedding, you see how much power Marlon Brando's character has. But what I also love about this is that you bring up all these characters, you set up who they're loyal to, but then but there's brilliant in how they give you this sense that those loyalties could break like that.
Well, there's also a great performance too by Robert Duvall as the adopted son, Tom Hayden. And one of my favorite scenes, it's a very small scene.
Abe Vigoda.
That's the scene I was going to mention. Thank you.
Sleeps with the fishes.
Abe Vigoda. My favorite scene is with Abe Vigoda, and there's a scene, I believe, at a funeral, and there's a conversation that Michael has with Vigoda, and that's when he knows something that's very important, and that is a brilliantly played scene. Godfather 2 is a film that basically only happened because Coppola even said, we didn't get anything on The Godfather. It was done as a cash-in. They really wanted to make money.
And he really didn't even want to direct it.
No.
He wanted to produce it, but he tried to get out of it, and he even suggested Martin Scorsese, but they said, no, we want you to come back and do it.
Yeah. And this one, he had a lot more freedom because they basically said, you do whatever you want, we just want a sequel. they took a lot of the unused portion of the first book, which the unused portion from the first book is all the stuff which is the prequel with Robert De Niro's character. That was all in the first book. They cut it out in the first one. And then the other half is new stuff by Coppola and Mario Puzo. And in fact, there's a very interesting cut that was prepared for television called Godfather, the complete epic, and it was in chronological order. And it's, you know what? It actually is worth watching. It's pretty fascinating.
And it actually has a lot of
deleted footage,
and it has like 73 minutes of cut footage.
Now, Godfather 2, this, as some people have said, that The Godfather 1 was Marlon Brando's movie, even though I think it's equally Pacino's. This one is all Pacino, and I will say this is probably Pacino's best performance, because in the first film you saw him slowly turn into this cold-blooded killer. This one, he is a cold-blooded killer who just does not, he is all business, and he makes his father look like an angel. A perfect example of this is the scene with Fredo, where even family doesn't get any
He's not just a cold-blooded person, he's a cruel person.
He's cruel.
He reaches his full metamorphosis into this, sort of the Macbethian kind of the character that he was destined to become. But I agree with Jeff. I think in a lot of ways Godfather 2 is a better film than Godfather 1. Even though Godfather 1 is amazing.
Exactly.
But Godfather 2, I love the flashback structure. De Niro is fantastic.
Yeah, that's interesting too, how De Niro got the role. They said that, Coppola was looking for someone to play the role, and Scorsese, who was kind of friendly, showed him some rough footage of Mean Streets, which had not been released at that time.
If you talk about attention to detail, think about what he was doing. Granted, they gave him a bigger budget because the first one was a success.
Oh my God, yes.
But he has to do he's basically doing two movies in one. One movie is set turn of the century. So he has to get that down. Then the other movie is set in the later part of the 1950s. Right, because it takes place when Cuba turned over to Castro and all that stuff.
And don't forget, all of the turn of the century stuff, most of it is all in Italian.
There's this wonderful scene with Pacino, with De Niro in the building with the gun, robbing Don, I forgot his name.
The towel.
Yes, which is probably my favorite scene in the movie.
Then the towel sets fire after he shoots it.
Yeah.
That is an important detail.
Yes, it is.
But how crushing is it when Michael kisses his brother?
Oh,
and you know what that means.
The kiss of death.
And it's it's something that everybody talks about. But if you think of you could just think about how we know they're scripting this and we gotta shoot this. How can we do this without too much exposition? And what they chose to do was so simple and so brilliant. It spoke volumes without any dialogue. You knew exactly what was going to happen.
He just had one, Fredo. I forgot what the exact one.
You sold me out.
You sold me out. Kissed him and just walked away. And then you just see John Cazale's face, like, oh shit, I'm fucked. And then what I thought was interesting is that Coppola and Puzo had a huge fight over the demise of Fredo.
But if you didn't do it, you wouldn't see Michael's full transformation.
Yeah, but then they fought it over tooth and nail, and then they came in with a compromise. The compromise was that they'd wait until the mother died, then he would kill Fredo, which makes a lot more sense.
And you also have to get into his transition into just being a very cruel human being, with his family. Diane Keaton, how he wants control over the kids, how he wants control over everything, how he's become so paranoid about his status and maintaining that.
This one was a lot more celebrated because you had Lee Strasberg get nominated for a Best Supporting Actor. You had, what is his name, Michael Grazzo nominated for Best Supporting, and Robert Duvall nominated, and of course Robert Duvall as usual lost. But the thing that I find interesting is that even though this is more Pacino's film, De Niro was the one who walked away with the Oscar. And he was supposed to be cast in the first one just in a much lower role as Don Corleone's bodyguard. And the thing that amazed me to this day is that when it comes to Godfather 1, Godfather 2, a lot of people use this on how they run their business. They use this as a model, as the inner workings of business. But unfortunately, I feel like a lot more people, or more urban people, use the movie Scarface as their ultimate mob movie because it's more violent, it's faster.
Glamorous.
And, it's more glamorous, whereas this one really gets to the heart of the matter of exactly what you're doing. It has to do with business, family, and how it's all intermixed and the drama it can cause in your life.
And I love all the performances in the movie. I think there's not one bad performance. And it's 4 hours, but let me tell you, I wish it was 5.
And don't forget the family reunion you get kind of at the end of the film in a flashback sequence.
So the conversation.
The conversation. Okay, well, this is a film, believe it or not, that actually came out just like within a couple of months of The Godfather 2. So Coppola was a very busy individual. This film was a very different type of film from him. It's a character study. And
who does it star?
it stars the one and only Gene Hackman.
But who was it written for?
Why don't you tell us, Jeff?
Marlon Brando, again, who Coppola, for some odd reason, loved working with this man, even though he tortured him whenever he worked with him. And I could kind of see Marlon Brando in the film. It would be interesting to see what his take on the character would be. But as a notorious critic of Gene Hackman on the show, I have to say, this is Gene Hackman's best performance.
I can agree with you on that. In fact, Gene Hackman said it's his favorite performance, and Coppola said, I think he said it's his favorite film.
It's funny, whenever we've reviewed a film that we've liked with Gene Hackman in it, you've never given him a bad review. You keep saying you're a critic of him, but you seem to like everything we've discussed with him.
Well, if you go online and see my critiques of Gene
like
Hackman.
Night Moves,
Lower third.
I was going to say, I'm going to say the conversation is a masterpiece in itself. It's so funny that recently. Oh, by the way, I should add Mike Foltz. We have Jeff here again. Mike Foltz had to cancel out on us because he mistakenly realized that he had a concert to go to tonight.
Tell him who he's seeing.
He's blowing us off for Pulp at Radio City Music Hall. I sort of don't blame him, and he has to get over this.
No, sorry, I do blame him. The CineFiles is better than fucking Pulp.
I don't know.
Don't you agree, Jeff? Don't you think the CineFiles is better than Pulp?
I'm not.
But eventually,
Pulp
Mike
fan.
does have to get over his man love for Jarvis Cocker. That's all I got to say. But anyways, recently we shot an episode on De Palma, and we talked about Blowout, and Jeff was here, and there's a lot of similarities to Blowout in the conversation.
He said he was inspired by Blow.
But
Up. Mike.
Maybe he's inspired by some Blow. He was inspired by some Blow as well, I think.
So there's like, excuse me if I start to mistake one scene from the other, because I just saw both back to back recently.
Okay.
But the conversation is brilliant. The
it's
conversation
great.
is amazing, and again, phenomenally well cast film.
John Cazale again.
John Cazale again.
Alan Garfield, who I think is a very unsung actor.
A young Harrison Ford.
Oh, yes.
And in
Cindy Williams.
And in the little time he has, he's amazing in it.
What's amazing about this film is that I was just watching the featurettes on this, so this is what was fascinating. If this film came out, and it's all about wiretapping and surveillance, and what's fascinating about this, it came out just before Watergate. Mm-hmm. And that's what's amazing is that how accurate they said that these techniques were that they used, because Coppola said he did a lot of research into all these surveillance things, and what makes the film work so well, and it's the key to this movie, is the paranoia that Gene Hackman feels. And in fact, I don't want to give the ending away, but the ending is the perfect coda to this character.
Perfect ending.
And Gene Hackman's character, Henry Call, is
Harry
Call is one of the greatest film characters ever.
I love him.
A fantastic character.
One of the things I like that this film achieves is not only is Gene Hackman feeling this paranoia, but you feel it as the film goes along. You feel the paranoia too, because you start to wonder, is he right to be feeling this way? Is he being, taped and followed? Or isn't he? And the one thing I really like about the film that you could not do today is that it never answers the question. It leaves it up to you.
That's great, because let me tell you, I saw the movie, I still don't know exactly what happened, but the thing is, you don't really need to know what happened, because it's not about the mystery, it's about Gene Hackman.
Well, it sort of is about the mystery, and that's a brilliant part of it. It's a great exercise in misleading your audience. And it's very well done in making you think, okay, you know where this is going. And then when you find out what's really happening, even if it's still a little ambiguous, it makes it clear that nothing is ever what it seems. And that's the brilliance of it. And here you have a character whose whole career is spying on people and has the tables turned against him. And now he's the one who's like in a situation of feeling paranoid. And what's really fascinating about the character, he's a private character. He doesn't want to let anyone in on his world, and suddenly his world is completely exposed.
That's another thing, because he's so into other people's lives that you see he has no life of his own. In fact, a great scene is with him and Terry Garr, the prostitute, where she obviously feels something for him, but he can't
You can't open up.
You
That's
can't
a
open up.
great scene
That is a
where they
great
try to bring like the prostitutes in. They're having a little party in a studio, and all the characterizations, even like Frederick Forrest and Cindy Williams, pre Laverne and Shirley, man. You know that whole stuff where it's just the whole conversation's them. And he's going over those recordings, Alan Garfield is great. He has a great point. He played the obnoxious, salesman douchebag.
That's the one scene that really hurt me. Is very much is where they have the microphone on him and
it's him.
Yeah, that is a heartbreaking moment, and we got to give credit again to Gene Hackman for pulling that off, because you really feel so bad for this guy. And another scene that I truly love is with Gene Hackman trying to figure out the mystery, going into the other room, looking in the toilet. The way that they put this together, it's like a real caper film. But like I said, you really don't care about the caper. You're more interested in the Harry Caul character. And also, when he has these dreams, these visions of things that have happened to him, where he's following this Winter Park, very dreamlike, but they work very well with wonderful cinematography and a great soundtrack by Francis Ford Coppola's brother-in-law, David Shire, who was Talia Shire's husband.
In a lot of ways, it's almost his most technically accomplished film, Francis Ford Coppola's, because of the editing, the scripting, and the audio.
And, Walter Murch. Got to get that to Walter Murch.
Walter
He
Murch
played a very big part in the conversation. He was the one who helped with the sound, with the mixing of the sound. And he does a really good job. These sounds add a lot of paranoia to the film, which is the key.
Even though I'm not going to go into the last scene, just that last shot of him, iconic, just sitting in the room with the saxophone.
Brilliant. This film and Godfather 2 and Godfather 1 and Apocalypse Now were all nominated for Best Picture, and Coppola won 2 out of 4. That's a pretty good average. So either way, check it out. It is an amazing movie. If you love thrillers, this is a great one.
Probably one of the top paranoia thrillers of the 70s. There were a lot of them at that time, a lot of conspiracy-type thrillers.
3 Days of the Condor.
3 Days of the Condor, The Parallax View.
This is the best one.
This is definitely one of the top 3 at least.
And if you watch this film, one thing keep in mind, you're going to see a lot of things that might look familiar to you, because this film has been ripped off big time over the years. I'm talking huge. So check it out, go in there with a fresh mind, and enjoy it. It is a phenomenal film, and I love it. Well, let's go on to Apocalypse Now. Apocalypse Now is the tail end of the auteur. Apocalypse Now is a film that Coppola wanted to make for many years, which was based on a book called Hearts of Darkness.
It's a novella by Joseph Conrad. And
it's updated to Vietnam.
It was meant to be, updated Vietnam. It was meant to be a low-budget picture produced by Zoetrope and directed by George Lucas. And all this is in the DVD extras and the great documentary.
Hearts of Darkness.
Hearts of Darkness.
Which I saw before I saw the actual film Apocalypse Now.
And it just, at some point, Francis Ford Coppola took over, and it wound up being a much bigger budgeted film that had all sorts of infamous problems getting it off the ground, from weather to the political situation in the country they're shooting in.
Eventually.
I think it did.
To actors having heart attacks.
To the infamous quote, "He's not dead unless I say he's dead."
And to a key actor that refused to show up when he was supposed to show up, and when he did, he gained way too much weight. He was supposed to have lost weight for that shoot.
I wonder who that is.
I fucking love Apocalypse Now.
What's amazing is
My favorite war film of all
love
time.
this film.
But what's so funny is that we're talking earlier about The Godfather, how Coppola had all these obstacles to face, and yet he still made an amazing film. That is nothing compared to what he went through on this film, and it turned out pretty fucking great. The film, Paramount would not put up the money for the movie because the filming in the jungle was very risky. In fact, one of the first person that Coppola went to star in the movie was Al Pacino, and Al Pacino goes, "I love you, Francis, but I won't go to war. I won't go to war. I won't go to war with you." I believe was the quote.
He tried to get Steve McQueen.
And couldn't get him. And then they got Harvey Keitel, and they got the permission of the cooperation of the Philippine government from Aldo Marcos to film this epic film in the Philippines. In fact, a lot of films are being filmed in the Philippines by American companies. So they thought it'd be a cheap place to film, and boy, they didn't take into account the typhoons, the hurricanes.
That the military would take the helicopters, so we couldn't film any scenes.
Filming on the water, which is something that he should have learned from Steven Spielberg with Jaws.
And coupled with Coppola's own compulsive obsessions in terms of what he wanted and get it perfect, that kind of held things back. I mean, he was like his own worst enemy as well on this shoot.
But introduction to the film for me.
But the movie itself is fascinating. It's a very, I like to call it a sort of burlesque take on war, where it's intentionally surreal in its presentation and satirical in a lot of ways, and it really they're actually, I mean, a lot of films like modern day, like war films, whether they're about Vietnam or World War II, like Saving Private Ryan or stuff like that, although they owe a lot to Apocalypse Now, there's really no other war film like Apocalypse Now.
Also, it's, even though it has a plot, it has a story. They have a clear mission of what they're supposed to do. We watch as they encounter all these different things and people on their journey, and sometimes lose people from their crew. Whereas when you watch most war films, it's always, okay, we're fighting a war. They get missions, but we never see them actually accomplish any missions. It's just the experience of being in war. Whereas this one, you have a clear-cut case of what you're supposed to be doing and what you actually experience, and it's totally different than anything else. You have Dennis Hopper, even though he's playing a photographer, basically playing what Dennis Hopper was like at that time.
This is one of the first films to really deal with Vietnam. There's a couple other films like Boys and Company Z, but this one really shows you how pointless the Vietnam War was. They really don't really have much of a mission. They're supposed to go to this place, and get the general.
Well, they're supposed to assassinate him.
Yeah, but
the whole point is they're supposed to find him and assassinate him.
But you could see during the point that these people become just as crazy as the guy that they're about to kill.
I love everything with Robert Duvall in it. Surf, what do you know about surfing? You're from New Jersey.
Charlie don't surf.
The whole thing is brilliant. I love the little bits like say they're going to do that, the big USO performance with the Playmates, and how that gets out of control, so they have to fly them out of there, and they have the little detail of the guy hanging onto the helicopter, And
Apocalypse Now was shot for almost 2 actually it was 2 years. In fact, Larry Fishburne, it's amazing that Francis Coppola didn't go to jail because he was underage when he was in the movie. He was there, I believe, at 14, lied about his age, and he's there 2 years. Surprisingly, he didn't age. He looks pretty much alike throughout the entire movie, which is amazing. But there is a treasure trove of deleted footage. I'm talking hours.
That you had always heard
8
about
hour
over
cuts.
the years.
I think I wouldn't say it's a better movie.
I don't at all.
No. But I think it's actually, but it's an interesting film. Like, he was right to initially edit out that whole bit with the French. However, I totally firmly understand why he shot that, because that is an important part of Vietnam history, and
the French,
and that was his way of trying to show people.
The French
settlements. Don't forget, this is why this all started in the first place. It was originally their war, not ours.
I understand what you said about the French sequence. I do like what he tried to do. Problem is, it's too long. If they would have cut it down by 10 minutes or so to 10,
and everything he needed to say about the war was already said.
This is the movie that brought Francis Ford Coppola to financial ruin. Luckily, when it was released, it was a big hit.
And it won the Palme d'Or, just like The Conversation won the Palme d'Or.
He lost, you should see the pictures of Francis Ford Coppola when he was just started.
He lost a lot of weight.
He lost literally more than half his body weight.
And that's why there's that infamous shot with him with a loaded revolver up to his head directing.
This was the start of the skepticism that's surrounded by the power of the auteur was Apocalypse. Now, it was really, Heaven's Gate was a film that just killed it for that. And to a certain extent, Sorcerer. Which was
that's a good movie, actually.
Which was the remake of, which is one of the rare great remakes, actually, that is unsung and hardly ever seen.
It's a remake of Wages of Fear.
Wages of Fear, which I love. I love Wages of Fear.
Me too. Same here.
So my favorite classic movies.
I still haven't seen it.
In some ways, I like Sorcerer better, but that was Friedkin, William Friedkin's bid to do something, and that failed. And Friedkin, Cimino, Coppola. All those guys were supposed to be, Bogdanovich were supposed to be this new thing of the powerful director that can do anything, they wanted to, and then you had these succession of films that just failed miserably.
Coppola made 4 great films in the 70s. Each one of them were nominated for Best Picture. 2 of them won.
He helped yours too, at Cannes.
And he also introduced the world to some many, 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 many great actors. And I have a lot of respect for him.
And his sister.
And yes, and his sister, and unfortunately
and
his nephew, who I can't stand.
Which is good. I don't care what anybody says. I like Coppola wine.
Well, anyway,
not Nicolas Cage.
Be sure, like I said. By the way, all of you are friends on Facebook. Please share the show on your timelines and send us comments. And we want to thank you.
Facebook page, Twitter account, the CineFiles, the CineFiles TV.
And don't forget about Jeff's TV show.
Unfinished Business. Type in sex appeal to let me know that you've been watching.
Hashtag unfinished B1.
And that's it. We're the CineFiles, and thank you for watching. And hey, we hope to see you on Facebook and on YouTube, and thank you for the support. I sound like Bartles and James now.
Awesome.
Go.
Okay. Hi, I'm Edwin. Will you stop? Okay. Hi, I'm Edwin Samuelson, and welcome to the CineFiles, a show that allows you to eavesdrop on the conversation of fellow film fanatics. Oh God! Today I'm joined. I'm sorry. These guys are making me laugh. This is Eric Cohen.
I'm not even doing anything.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we're here today to discuss.
Wait, were we discussing this?
Exactly. You never made it clear.
Which one are we doing right now?
I don't know. I think it looks like I got a little wasted.